Do you think the police planted all of this evidence?
That's where I think the evidence pointed. I really do.
There are 4 categories of evidence that you think were set up, tampered with, whatever. Car, electronics, key, and bones. To have a conspiracy, this has to involve a lot of people that have remained mum for 10 years. And that's a pretty elaborate cover-up, if that's what happened. It's a pretty elaborate undertaking to plant this evidence. I'm not saying it didn't happen, but you believe that they did this. Why? Why are they so out to get Stephen Avery?
Well, he's suing them for $36 million for his wrongful conviction. And it's not just the money. He's embarrassing them. So they had a lot against Stephen Avery, a lot of motive.
Well, Ken says, and I think people would agree, DNA doesn't lie. It's either there or it's not. How do you think it got in the car, and how do you think it got on Teresa's key?
Well, let's talk about the key for a minute. It was found on the 6th entry or 7th entry of the trailer. It was not the first thorough search of Stephen Avery's bedroom. The first search, they were in there for 2.5 hours in that little trailer. This is a small place. And, you know, they seized other items from his bedroom. And yet they don't find this key. Now, if you look at that key, you can see there's milling marks. That's not her daily key. That's what a key looks like before you start using it all the time. It had none of her, that's a spare key. It had none of her DNA on it, and all those crevices where she supposedly was handling it for 2 years that she had the car, only his DNA is found on it, and it's a very small amount of his DNA that their expert said was consistent with the amount of DNA you would get if you rubbed a toothbrush or some personal item against it.
Why would he have contact with the key at all?
Well, exactly. He shouldn't have had contact with the key, and he didn't have contact with the key. And what's it doing in his bedroom? On the one hand, they want to try and make Stephen Avery into this criminal mastermind who's able to clean up this huge mess in his house, finding no DNA or blood anywhere. And yet, he's stupid enough to put the key in his bedroom? Makes no sense.
What do you say to that?
Well, spare key, first thing that Jerry Buting doesn't tell you is there's a blue fob that's attached to that as well. The other end of that, the lanyard, is locked in her car on the other end of Stephen Avery's property.
Study after study has shown when more than one person handles an object like a doorknob, a light switch, or whatever, you will get a mixture of DNA on it. And somebody who's uses a key every single day, think about how many times you touch that thing. All the crevices in the key, on the handle of the key, it was swabbed all the way around. And they didn't find a bit of Teresa Halbach's DNA on that key.
You want to answer the question about the fob?
Who cares about the fob? The key is
the jury
an issue.
cared about the fob. The jury convicted your client primarily, or at least partly, because the fob matched the lanyard. You never hear that in Making a Murderer. You never hear it through your argument.
You stood up in closing argument in the rebuttal and you said, well, maybe the key is planted. Who cares? Put it all aside, as if that doesn't matter. You know, you recognize that the key was highly suspect. The discovery of the key was highly suspect.